a team of journalists. They are here with Dr. Clarence Moniba, a Liberian, and he has a special statement to issue this morning. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I am concerned that even though we are an independent country, the only time Liberians seek justice, accountability, and transparency in our government is when the United States monitors, fact finds, and ultimately sanctions our government officials. Today, after President Weah has ordered a public investigation into the allegations of the U.S. government, we as Liberians ask that the investigation and its findings be completed urgently. Most importantly, we demand from this investigation one of two things: an official statement of innocence or an indictment, jail term, and restitution. This clear outcome is our bare minimum demand because we must begin a real process towards our national fight against corruption. Accountability, however, cannot just be limited to these three government officials in this administration. With me having served in the previous administration in various positions in government, such as Minister of State without portfolio, head of the President's Delivery Unit, as well as chairman of the Liberia Electricity Corporation, I joined the millions of other Liberians who are open and demand that President Weah has a public and fair investigation into the suspected officials of his current administration, but that this scrutiny and prosecution be extended to officials who served during the 12 years of the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration as well. President Sirleaf, as recently as 2 weeks ago, has welcomed this type of scrutiny and investigation. So I say we continue to go down that path. If we want a new Liberia, we must finally start to take the allegations and acts of corruption very seriously. As people of this great country, we must realize that the economic and political consequences of corruption affects generations. These consequences result to absolutely no money being left over to build schools, to build modern hospitals, to pay teachers, to train doctors and nurses, or to build roads. There comes a time in the nation's history when it reaches a decision point regarding the direction of its country. Fellow Liberians, that time is now. Corruption must not be ignored. It must not be encouraged. And it must no longer go unpunished. Let us call on the IMF and the World Bank, other financial institutions. Let us call on the United States government, the United Kingdom's government, and other bilateral partners. And more especially, let us call on our audit and anti-corruption agencies to do what they are meant to be doing, which is protecting and empowering the lives of Liberians by helping to stop corruption. As a young leader in Liberia and former government official, I accept the full audit of my offices held during my time in government. I hope that all others in this administration and previous administrations will do the same. Enough is enough. In order to save our country, we must fight corruption. God bless the Republic of Liberia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moniba. My name is Gerald Koyene, and with my colleagues we would like to ask you a few questions. Yeah, regarding your statement you just put out. You called for the investigation of corrupt officials of this current administration and the past government.
Absolutely.
Which of course you serve in several capacities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, people watching you this morning, listening to you, would like to know, who do you think is qualified, is capable, is trusted to carry on this investigation?
You know, and this is the difficulty that we have in Liberia right now. The fact that we have to pose that question. We should be saying that we have all the proper appropriate institutions established in the country. The question is, do we trust them? And which brings us to the reason we are at right now. That the only reason we're even talking about corruption right now in this country is because the United States government brought it up. They put these 3 individuals on the sanctions list. So we have to be very honest with ourselves as Liberians. Are we really ready to fight corruption? Because when you look at Liberia's history, who has gone to jail in Liberia for the last 30 or 40 years for corruption? It's very difficult to identify and pinpoint somebody who has gone to jail. So the question is, who is authorized or qualified to do so? The right answer should be the Liberian government. But do we trust them? And so that's where we call on the international institutions. That's why I mentioned the World Bank, who gives us hundreds of millions of dollars. I mentioned the IMF, who does the same as well for us. I mentioned the United States government, who thankfully brought this up to our attention again. I mentioned the United Kingdom, who is a good friend of ours, and other bilateral partners and institutions. Let all of us work together to finally and once and for all stamp out corruption in this country. We continue to talk about corruption. We have never addressed the serious issue. Nobody is held accountable in this country. Nobody goes to jail. Nobody held accountable. Imagine if we had a country. Imagine if we had a country where people were accused of corruption, where they were prosecuted, and if they were found guilty, they went to jail. Imagine in the same country where we went to the people's houses. If we went to the houses and took their families out of there, we took their houses and sold it back, auctioned it, so that the money from those proceeds went back to government, to building schools, to building modern hospitals, to paying teachers better wages. Imagine what type of country we will have. Right now we have a country where when somebody steals, our society, our culture, we protect them. We stand there, we make them Father of the Year, we make them Mother of the Year, and we know that they have stolen. So again, our generation, 70% of the people in this country are under the age of 40. So therefore, our generation have to be the one to transform and change this country for the better. We can no longer wait for others to do it for us. Again, this is a perfect example of what happened. We had to wait for the U.S. to sanction some of our government officials before now it becomes a public outcry. Why are we waiting for that? Every time, when you go out and you talk to people about corruption, a lot of times I hear that, there's corruption all over the world. That's fine. We agree there's corruption all over the world. But the question is, the only corruption that should matter is the corruption that's happening here in Liberia. Because that's what's killing Liberians. I mentioned and I brought the point up in my press release. The fact that we have corruption in Liberia means that we don't have enough money to build modern hospitals. People are dying because we don't have the drugs, the medication to help Liberians. So we have to be very clear at a certain point, which should be now. Our generation, the younger generation of this country, says enough is enough. And we start to transform our society, not just in month, not just to say we're fighting corruption, but to actually do it.
So, from my end, again, talking about investigating the 2 governments, especially those officials, that means you will be subjecting yourself to this investigation, and of course the former president Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Absolutely, but that's the whole thing about it. We cannot continue to say we want a better country, we want a developed country, yet when there's time to hold people accountable, we are scared. That's why I 100%, and I knew what I was doing. I put myself up to this. I want to be subjected to an audit. Let every single official be subjected to that audit as well. We have to change the perception in Liberia. Right now in Liberia, when people join government, the perception is that everybody steals. That people go into government to gain for themselves. We have to change that perception to understand that when people enter government, it's to give, it's to be of service to our country, not to gain. But in order for people to believe that, we have to start to hold people accountable. I will keep saying that word, accountability, because we do not focus on that in this country. We always let people get away with stuff. Oh, they forget it, that his time. So we have to begin to change this. So therefore, yes, I'm subjected to that because I served in President Sirleaf's government. Again, I talked about the different positions I've served. So she herself, she would welcome that. I'm sure she would welcome that. She has to welcome that. And like I said in my press release, 2 weeks ago, she welcomed that. And I don't think her stance should change or will change. Let everybody be held accountable. At a certain point, some generation has to fix this country. It has to be ours.
Yeah, it has been 4 years, more than 4 years now since this government took over. And you're just coming up now, talking about subjecting the past government to audit and investigation. Why now?
There's never a better time for now. And when I say that, I mean, this is the time where I've been going around the country over the past year, talking to people, talking to them with the message to become the change that they want to see in our country. We have to be very clear that in order to develop and build Liberia, nobody is going to do it for us. So slowly but surely, I'm coming to the realization that I cannot just continue to stand and complain and sit on the sidelines. Liberia no longer can afford people just to stand around with their hands folded. Every single person has a role to play in our society. Every single person has a role to play, regardless if they work in government, or if they're a market woman, if they're a pimping rider. Every one of us has a responsibility to build this country to the nation that we want. And so as a result, I've taken it upon myself to be able to put myself in a position to say that I'm one of the people in this younger generation who must demand, who must lead the fight to say that we cannot leave Liberia like the generation that we had, that we met. We cannot fail the generation that followed us. So because of that, I can no longer stay on the sidelines. I can no longer sit on the sidelines and watch what's happening happen. Every single day, there's more people who are falling into poverty. Every single day, there's Liberians who are dying for minimal health reasons. Right now in Liberia, if you get sick, instead of going to JFK, you go to RIA. How many people can afford a plane ticket to leave this country? But these are things we have to be able to address right now. So that's why I'm speaking out now. I've been talking, and now I'm publicly coming out more and more, because somebody has to be able to say enough is enough. And I want to be one of the people who joined that chorus to be able to change Liberia for the better.
Dr. Moniba, thank you so much. My name is Henson Dega, and I do report for Truth FM. I've listened to you, but what I want to know, I want to ask, that perhaps your call at this time could be laudable, but there could be a political undertone. Is that the case?
Listen, in Liberia, as we talk about building this country, there's always going to be political undertones in everything we do, in every single thing we do. And yes, 2023 is coming, so everybody is going to be thinking that direction. But what we should be focusing on more is the call to transform our country. That has to be the fight. That has to be the mission of every single Liberian. Politics or not. Politics or not. Liberia must be in a position to fight corruption. We don't have the luxury of having millions of dollars taken away from Liberian government coffers.
You are not the only person in this country to champion the cause.
Absolutely.
On the issue of corruption.
And we need a lot of voices.
There are other Liberians, including civil society actors.
Absolutely. And I applaud the statement that they put out last year.
But yet, Liberia cannot achieve the fight against corruption. What do you think is responsible?
I mentioned it before, we do not hold people accountable in this country. I said it. Who has gone to jail in Liberia for the last 30 or 40 years? Once people start going to jail, Liberian people, we hard to hear, but we're very quick to learn. We hard to hear, but we're very quick to learn. Let's set example on people going to jail after they have been prosecuted, proven guilty. we ensure that that person goes to jail. We make sure their property, their land, whatever is seized, auctioned.
Can that be possible in a Liberia where people feel that they are one way or the other connected to one another?
And that's what's hurting us. Because everybody feel like they know everybody. Everybody always says, what do we say in Liberia? That my interest. That my interest. So that thinking and mindset is why Liberia is the country we have right now. That thinking and mindset is the reason why today, as we sit in here, we're sending children to dirt floor classrooms. Teachers who have gotten paid for months, nurses and doctors are only making $100, $200. That thinking of protecting our interests. At a certain point in this life, we have to be more selfish to ourselves and accountable to our country.
So, Pastor, from my end, they call to all the past government officials. You serve in the past government as one of those officials.
Yes.
And I'm quite sure that there is no government that will serve a country without a corruption scandal. Can you point or can you name one or two individuals that you think were caught up in corruption, in the web of corruption, and that they should be audited?
Well, and that's what I'll leave to our agencies to do, and that's another thing in Liberia, speculation. Speculation has also affected a lot of good, well-meaning, well-serving Liberians. Because the negative perception we have in Liberia, and this is one of the reasons I'm calling out to call for an audit, not on the previous administration, but this one as well. Because the perception is anybody who enters government is corrupt. Anybody who enters government has stolen. So in order to change the country, in order to get good meaning Liberians to continue to serve our country, to build our country, the first thing we have to do is to change that perception, to understand that we have Liberians who are honest and hardworking. I believe and I know that I'm one of them.
And how do we determine that? Because over the years, you have people who didn't have anything but they entered government within less than 4 to 5 years they build mansion.
And that's
so then how do you expect Liberians to believe?
You absolutely. And that's why we have to be able to have people prove what they have before they even start working in government. You have to be able to have, when you enter government, you have to be able to show to the Liberian people, this is what I have. And when you leave in government, we have to also be able to show to the people, this is what I'm leaving with. So these are mechanisms that are put in place so we can safeguard the Liberian public, the Liberian resources. We have to be able to create Liberia into a country where everybody can benefit, where the person all the way in the southeast can benefit. That's the type of prosecution of these people and the punishment of these people.
Okay, so normally in our country, many times people champion advocacies and they want change, but they do not have followers. So that they'll be able to influence whatever advocacies they think they want to achieve as a result of the lack of investment. So what exactly are you doing that as you are speaking today, a lot of Liberians will say, yes, a patriotic Liberian has spoken. So we think we can follow his ideology.
Right. Listen, our call has to be, and when I say our call, meaning the people of Liberia, our generation, every single person, our call has to be a new Liberia. So when we talk about the ideology, very often in Liberia we follow individuals, we follow people, but we don't follow ideology. What we have to be able to do in Liberia right now, what we have to be able to transform is the fact that all of us have to rally around the development and the success of Liberia. So when we're talking about followers, sometimes there's a right message and a wrong messenger. We have to have people who have the right message and are the right messengers. And not only that, we have to have people committed to creating this new Liberia, where everybody, like I said earlier, benefits from the success, from the resources, from the hard work of other good working and good meaning Liberians. That's what we have to be able to do in this country.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Dr. Moniba. My questions just drove from the past what you were talking about. My colleague actually concerning the issue of election around the corner 2023. So we would like to know how sincere are you in your quest calling for the auditing of the past in the current regime, especially so you work in the previous regime, the Sirleaf regime that has the issue of corruption too, where there's a name came about, you hear about corruption come, Billboard 1, Billboard 2. Many Liberians did not hear the voice that the Moniba speaking to these corruptions that were in the previous regime. Why now, wherein you only have a year to the election, and you come in calling for the auditing of the past regime? So one would like to know how sincere are you in your call? It is because of the election, or you seeking some political office, or it is something that you ready, even if you happen to partake in the election and you do not be successful, if you will still continue your advocacy?
And that's an excellent question, but here's the thought process, okay? The elections is coming up. So what we as Liberians need to do is to be able to identify people who are sincere in their efforts to fight corruption. So you're absolutely right. The reason why this call is right now and is critical is so that we don't continue to make the mistakes of our past. We continue, a lot of times in Liberia, we continue to put people in offices, whether it's representative, senator, sometimes president. We continue to put people in these positions where they're not worthy of those seats. We continue to support and rally around people. Like I said earlier, we will know somebody steals money, we'll know somebody is corrupt, yet we'll make them Mother of the Year. So the reason why this call is critical as 2023 comes along is so that Liberian people start to think, what's the benefit of the country and not necessarily my interest? What's the benefit of the Liberian people and not necessarily that mean I'm a tribesman? So yes, this call is now. This call needs to be forever. And also the fact is, other people were calling for the same advocacies. Other people were calling for the same fight against corruption. But the mistake we're making as a nation is that right now only a few people call for it. What we need to be able to do is make sure the entire country calls for it. Once the entire country is completely fed up, tired of the stealing, of the corruption, then you will see Liberia start to progress. Then you'll see Liberia start to move. Then you'll see the developed Liberia that we want right now.
So finally from my end, my name is Gerald, calling in again of Front Page Africa. Dr. Moniba, you're from a privileged background. You are the son of the late Dr. Harry F. Moniba, the former vice president of the Republic of Liberia. And you served as at the level of the cabinet in the past regime, where you even had the president delivery program. Now you have now already been vocal. People don't know you've already been vocal. Now you are coming up to speak up. What is the next move? How far you intend to go with this call, this advocacy, and what is the next move?
Listen, the call is for a new Liberia. I said in my first statement, and I'm saying it now, enough is enough. There's only so much one person can take. I came back to Liberia in 2012. And where we are right now, we should be a lot of people in Liberia right now, if you look at their living conditions. Yes, you're right. My father, and I'm very proud of my father being Dr. Harry Moniba. And one thing I'm proud of is that there's nowhere I've been to in Liberia, all the counties I've been to, where anybody came and accused him of anything. And so that's the type of legacy I want to continue to push. So as we now begin to become vocal, there's always a time to become vocal. And my message has been to all the Liberian people, all the young people in this country, when I tell them, I say, go home and look in the mirror. Whoever you see looking at you is the one responsible to develop and fix this country. So that's the advice I'm trying to take for myself as well. I have to be one of the people to also take on the responsibility to develop and build this country, to be able to push this country forward. So we have to be able to do it. So no matter if somebody comes from a privileged background, if we want to say it like that, or no matter if somebody comes from the poorest of the poor, all of us have one destiny in this country, which is Liberia. And so going back to the fact of people calling for corruption, the challenge we have had, the mistake we have had, is that only individuals have been calling for to prosecute corruption. What we need is our entire nation to be calling for the prosecution of corrupt officials. That's the only way we're going to be able to build this country and move this country forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Clarence Moniba. He served as an official in the past government. Now he's adding his voice to the many voices calling for the prosecution of corrupt officials, and he's extending it to the past government. My name is Gerald Koine for Front Page Africa.